Hello world, this is DJ Craven and you're listening to the Craven Happiness Podcast. I come to you on today's episode with a special episode to me. It doesn't need any kind of numbering system for an episode number. It does need a brief introduction that I give you here now. On Friday, April 17th, 2020, Thomas E Gildea suddenly passed. Not only was he my wife's grandfather, and not only was he the matriarch of the group of companies that I work for, and that we're also getting ready to celebrate our 60th anniversary, and it's spread across 3 generations. I've learned in the last 48 hours since his passing that he impacted the lives of so many. There are so many stories over and over again that we're hearing and that I'm hearing from family members, from non-family members, business and the others, that this man was such an amazing person. Sometime in the end of 2019, we made a decision as a company and as a family that we needed to document his story and his journey, and celebrating our 60th anniversary coming up in 2020. About 7 weeks before his passing, I got the opportunity to go to Florida for a safety convention. And after that safety convention was over, I drove down to his house and I was able to actually conduct that interview and kind of have him give the opportunity to tell us his story from a young child to starting a company, family, and then ultimately to today. It was an unbelievable experience for me. Certainly means a lot more now considering his passing. We will hear that now, we'll hear that next, and I hope that as everybody phases their life through grievance of his loss into celebrating his life, that this interview could put just a smile on your face, as he did to me when I watched it afterwards. And I hope you enjoy it. And I hope you can take a little piece of this and it'll help during this time and obviously going forward as well. So everybody out there, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the other side. Ready?
Yep.
All right. Okay, so why don't you start off by just introducing yourself, just kind of saying who you are.
Okay, I'm Tom Gildea. I was born in Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania in 1930. That was back before the Depression, and we lived. I was the fourth of 5 children in our family. My dad was a railroader, worked in the Pennsylvania Railroad. As a locomotive engineer. He worked there for a long time. He worked there till, in the 70s.
And where was your dad from originally?
He was from Hollidaysburg.
Hollidaysburg too?
Yes.
And your mom?
We were discussing that with Judy just the other night. And it's somewhat of a mystery. I can't tell you.
Oh, okay.
She's one of the small towns around Altoona.
Around that area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then your dad worked on the railroad, and he was what specifically did he do on the railroad?
He ran an engine.
Oh, okay.
Locomotive engineer. He pulled the levers for pulling trains.
Okay. Now, did that take him away for periods of time, or did he come back every day?
No, he was in the local.
Okay.
He was in the local at that time, back when he worked in Altoona was a big railroad center. They might have had 6,000 people working in their shops. It was a big Pennsylvania Railroad center.
Yeah.
Because it was right in the foot of the mountains where you go over the Horseshoe Curve, over the Allegheny Mountains to get down into Johnstown and Pittsburgh.
Right. Yeah. So you were 4 of 5. So your oldest was?
Dick was 6 years older than I was.
Okay. And then
Judy was 10 years younger.
And Judy was 10 years younger. Okay. So, and then in between there would have been after Dick's age was...
My sister Jean.
Jean.
She's the one that had polio.
Right.
Was handicapped. And then my brother Joe, who went to the Naval Academy. I think he went down to his wake.
Yep, his funeral. Yep, I was there. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was next.
So what was it like being the youngest for almost 10 years?
I told my little sister she ruined my life.
Well, explain more.
Well, you know, when you've been the baby in the family for 10 years and then you get a little sister to come in, it's like taking a shot in the head.
Yeah.
I kid her about that. It's not,
Certainly,
it's
yeah.
not that important. You know,
Right.
It's just something that I kid her about.
Right. So you enjoyed being the baby?
Obviously, my mother took me everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, when you have older children, I had a 16-year-old. Well, let me see. When she was born, my Dick was 16. She was born right before the war, Second World War started.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how was Dick as an older brother? Because he was obviously the oldest and everything. How was he as an older brother?
He was like a father to me.
Okay.
More so than my dad.
And and why so? Because your dad wasn't around much, or
well, he was just not a very friendly. My dad was tough, you know, having a big family and depression. You know, I lived all through the depression from 30 to 40.
Right.
Yeah, and it was tough living. And could you imagine the pressure he had on with 4 kids?
Right. Did he work a lot? I would imagine.
He worked all the time.
Yeah.
No, if he didn't work at the railroad, he sharpened lawnmowers and he fixed cars, and he was a mechanic. He was a good mechanic.
Yeah. And then your sister Jean, you mentioned obviously she was the one that had polio.
Yes.
How was that growing up? Because you didn't know any different, obviously, but how was that dynamic with her having the polio, and at least even amongst you kids?
Well, I can't remember. Of course, she was 4 years old. She had polio when she was 2, so I didn't come along till 2 years later.
Right.
And till I could remember anything, she was probably 8 or 10, and been into the hospital a couple times, many surgeries.
Right.
Down in Philadelphia.
Right.
Shriners Hospital.
Right. Yeah. All the way in Philadelphia. Right. I mean, that would have been probably a train ride.
Train ride. That's right. Back then, people working the railroad had passes. They could ride the train free.
Okay.
And that's how I got back and forth when I went to Philadelphia. I went to school in Philadelphia.
Right, which we'll get to.
Okay.
So then next sibling would have been Joe.
Yes.
And describe me to Joe, and maybe throw in there how he got his nickname.
Well, I'll talk about the nickname. He was I was a rough and tumble athlete, and he was a sort of a round kind of a kid. And,
yeah.
I used to call him Fluffy Duffy, you can't catch me, and I'd run and he could never catch me. So he and I were close friends. We were only 18 months apart or something like that, with 20 months or something like that. And he was a smart guy. He had a good brain. He got the brains in the family. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
I didn't get them.
Oh, I don't know about that.
But he was a good brother.
Yeah.
And then he graduated from high school, and he went in the Army because they extended the GI Bill in 1946, the year after the war ended. They extended the GI Bill, and he and a lot of his friends, I'm going to say 4 or 5, they enlisted in the Army to get the GI Bill.
Oh, okay.
And he went to he came out of the Army after, I think, 2 years or 18 months, I'm not sure. And he he went into AUC, that's the undergraduate center for out to Penn State. And he went there and he was applied to the academies, and then he got accepted, and then he went to the Naval Academy in the year after I went to Villanova, he went to the Naval Academy.
Nice.
But,
and then your younger sister Judy, again, you're 10 years younger, so you're 10 years old when she came along.
Yes.
And then were you able to form a relationship with her much during those younger years, because she was just so much younger?
Yeah. You know, when she was 17, I left for school. I went away to school, so I didn't interact much. I did.
Right.
Yeah, but you know.
She was a lot younger, though.
Oh yeah.
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 Certainly much easier later in your
And
life.
she ended up going to Duquesne in Pittsburgh College.
I didn't know that. Okay.
And she got a degree in I can't remember. She worked for NASA in Pittsburgh, in Washington. When she got out, she worked for publicity or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other person we didn't talk about much in your household was your mother. You mentioned you went a lot with her and around when you were the baby for a long period of time.
I was very close to my mother, really, because of that tenure.
Yeah.
That 10 years. But she was a good mother. There's no question about that. She had a tough life. My dad was rough. You know, going through the Depression, you got to understand what pressures they had on them. You know, the men back in those days.
Right.
And he was so proud, DJ, that he wouldn't. You know, at that time, you could get free food. You know, they called it something, government. And I remember one time, I think it was me or one of my brothers, went up and got a bag of flour or something. He made him take it back.
No kidding.
That's the kind of guy he was. Not gonna any free stuff in here.
Very proud man.
Yes.
Yeah.
He said, I'll work another job or I'll do something, but we always had plenty to eat.
Right.
Yeah, he was very good about that.
No, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
But you were very, very close with your mother.
Yes.
And describe her as far as how was she? She obviously ran the household and helped everything along those lines.
Right. She didn't work or outside the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. But she was a very hard worker, man. Oh man. We lived in a poor area. We lived down where you probably remember seeing a house down Holliesburg, down Blair Street. But you know, we 3 boys slept in one room. Jean had a little bedroom, and parents slept in the other. But yeah, that's something.
So, as a child, what were a lot of your interests as a child?
You know, when I was at the age when the war started in 1941, I was 11. My big interest was making money.
Okay.
That was my motivation all my life.
Okay.
I always had that. You know, I had paper routes and different ways that I'd figure out. I'll give you an example. Back in our little town, there was an old, like a monastery. I don't know where you ever saw it, right in the middle of town, you know that. And they put it during the war, the Navy put a CB school or something in there. So I was paper route, and I figured out those sailors, they don't get up too early. So I got where they gave the papers away. I got them when it got late in the Sunday, you know, when the papers were getting old. I got some kind of a deal that I could buy some paper, and I took them up and I walked through all the halls where the sailors worked, and I sold the papers. My mother said, "Where are you getting all this money?" But that's the kind of a guy I was, you know. I always figured out some way. I always had money. I never asked for anything. I didn't need to. I always had more money than I could spend, really. I always had a way to work to get money.
So very entrepreneurial as a young age.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. I think it's sort of what a precursor to what I got involved in. You know?
Yeah.
I wanted to, I just wanted it that way. And then I had a lot of different, I worked for a contractor, built, you know, when I was 10 or 12 years old or 13 during the war, and there was no men around.
Mm-hmm.
So a 13-year-old could make some money.
Yeah.
Because there's nobody else. If you were ambitious enough and not afraid to climb up ladders and get on roofs and do things, I did that.
Is that where you got your first taste of construction?
Pretty much so. There was a contractor, carpenter contractor lived next door, a couple of doors from us, and I worked for him because he had one of his boys had some ear problems or didn't go to the service, so I worked with them. Hauled garbage, that was part of it.
Yeah.
Haul garbage and do it all. It's just it's sort of a precursor of what how I went through it. Then I got into high school, and all my friends were going to go to college, and I had no way. My dad, you kidding? My dad wouldn't pay anything. That's no way. So I thought that I couldn't get a scholastic scholarship. I wasn't smart enough, and he didn't have much of that stuff. But there is one way if you got a football scholarship. So I rooted around, and then somebody got me an appointment to Villanova. One of my friends went to school there, and he made it. And I went down and did a tryout and won a scholarship to Villanova, full scholarship, 4-year scholarship.
And was that any kind of particular? Was it for what position did you play?
Linebacker.
Linebacker.
Yep.
And you played when you were younger as well?
I played in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's that entrepreneurship or that mindset that I had came out in football because I figured I might as well do well.
Absolutely.
I might as well, and I worked hard at it, and I got recognized. I had a chance to go to Pitt or Penn State, I don't know, a couple southern schools, but I went down to the Villanova tryout, and they gave me a scholarship right away. So I had a 4-year ride, and then I wasn't a real good football player. I was good enough, but in the class that we were playing Army, Navy, Penn State. But after a couple years, I got onto the NROTC, and I took the test and I got a scholarship for that. So then I had 2 scholarships down there at one time. So I had some cash.
Oh, okay. Again, another way to find money.
Yeah, the Navy paid me, I forget what it was, $50 a month maybe, and I had a full ride. But when you're on a scholarship for football back then, you didn't miss practice. You didn't, and I was started in the engineering school first year because they had freshman football back then. You didn't have to play. So I got into the engineering school and started, but after I made the varsity, the coach says, you either come to practice, don't do your labs, or you lose your scholarship. They do that back then.
Oh, wow.
There was no protection.
No.
So I couldn't take the courses. Just a shame.
Yeah.
Shame. I didn't have a chance.
Right. Or a choice.
Or a choice. I had no choice.
Yeah.
I had no other way to go to school. And then when I got that Navy scholarship. That changed my motivation a little bit. Then I started thinking about that, and I started in the NROT. Back then, you could do it in 2 years. If you had the first 2 years, you're undergraduate. But then I got in the Marine Corps, and it's another story.
So, going from the Villanova and then graduating from Villanova, did you go immediately into the Marine Corps?
I did. I graduated in 52, and I had been down to Marine camp a couple of years. You know, they sent you in summer camp. But then I went on active duty in June of 52. And I went to basic school, and then I'm down, and I ended up going to, during the Korean War was when I went in, is when it was going on. And then we were shipped out of San Diego, I thought we were going to Korea, but that was the time, at the Korean time, you probably don't remember this, but they had peace talks. You know, they would stop fighting for a while, and then anyway, we were aboard ship on the way over, and they settled something, and they dropped us off in Japan. So I never got to Korea. I never went to Korea.
Okay, but you were basically on the way.
Oh yeah, we were in the zone. They called it not the battle zone. Didn't matter. But then I was over there. I don't know, so long, and then I shipped back, and I was dating Joanne at the time.
Okay, so you'd already met Joanne.
Yes.
And where did you meet Joanne? Because she's from the Hollidaysburg
Yes.
area too, right?
We were, one of our friends, or a couple of them, they had a little painting contractor. We got a job to paint their big house. They had a big house up on the hill. And I saw her laying out in the yard, and I thought it didn't look bad for me. So I started going with her. That was when I was a junior, I think, in college. But she went to Dickinson, down Carlisle.
Okay.
And I came back. She was in her last year when I came back. Some things missed, but yes, that's right. And then when I came back, her dad died in the meantime somewhere along the line. I won't get involved in that. And her mother rented out a room to a superintendent, a construction superintendent that built the car shop. Now, do you remember seeing the car shop down Hollidaysburg, down along the railroad? Big, long. The building was half a mile long or something like that.
Okay.
Well, he was the superintendent on that job. And when I come home, I got to know him because he lived up at Joanne's house. So he said something, "You want a job?" You know, and I said, "Yeah, I just come back from the Marine Corps."
Right.
And so he said, "What do you want to?" I said, "I don't want to be in the office. I want to work." So that's the way that was one of my keys. If you don't have some asset or some ability or some knowledge or something, you got to overcome that with hard work.
Right.
Hard work. So I said, so they gave me a job, and I did such a good job. What I was doing, DJ, is when they're erecting that steel, and they use erection bolts to put the structural steel together, and then they pulled them out, and then they riveted. Then the riveting gangs come in, and they drop all those bolts. You know, they just drop on the ground. Well, my job he gave me was to pick those up and take them over to a bench and put a hard nut on them. You know what a hard nut is? And rethread them.
Right.
So that they put them in a bucket, and then they take them back and they
So
use
reuse
them on down.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things. So this guy says, Jesus, he really goes, because that's the only way I could figure I could make a mark. You have to do it.
Right.
If you're not smart, or you're not good looking, or you're not something, you got to make your mark. So I used hard work. I told the kids that over the years, and so then they could see some future in me. So they gave me a job as checking shop drawings. I didn't know what a shop drawing was. So one of the engineers taught me how to, just what you're looking for and what, it's change. You know how a big job like that, the shop drawings change every week or day or something.
Right.
So I started and I did a good job on that, and then they got me into the payroll, and I did a good job on that. Then I got into the engineering. They gave me an engineering crew from the railroad, furnished a rodman, a transitman, a levelman, and a couple of, and I was in charge of getting from the contractor's point, getting the information that they needed to continue the thing. So I got into that, and that worked out pretty well. And I got to know the people, and the next thing you know, they transferred me they built a foundry down in Chambersburg Engineering. It's a foundry, SECO, Chambersburg Engineering Company. So I went down there as the assistant superintendent. I didn't know my ass from first base. But it's amazing, DJ, what you can learn when you have to.
Yeah.
When you want something, you're going to learn how to do it. I don't care what you.
Yeah.
So I got going down there and helping them. We started building, and the superintendent got sick. Guess what happened?
You got promoted.
They called from the Philadelphia office. I was only 2 years into the company, or maybe a little bit more. They called from Philadelphia office. Can you handle that till we get another superintendent up there? I said, certainly. Didn't know. But I had a good carpenter foreman, good iron worker foreman, experienced men. And they liked me. So they'd come over to my apartment after we got married. We got married when we lived down there. They'd come over and help me with the drawings at night, because they didn't have any family there. They were temporary. That's the way they did back in those days.
Yeah.
You don't take families. You go and then go home on the weekends. But that lasted for about a year, and then I got transferred to Philadelphia on a Gulf headquarters building. It's City Line Express. It was a big job. And what I was doing, I can't remember. And I was at that job when they sent me to Meadville.
Oh, okay.
That's how I got to Meadville.
That's how you get to Meadville.
We went up and built that shop.
Nice.
That's a long story.
Yeah, that's a good story. This is all great. These are all the things. Those are answered a bunch of the questions in there. So while you were going through some of that process there of, learning how to do shop drawings, and then kind of going into the engineering, and then eventually assistant superintendent, opportunity to be a superintendent, did you ever see yourself, really being in that kind of superintendent or running a job level?
Yes.
You saw yourself at that point?
Yes.
And then what about even then the next step from there of maybe, calling all the shots, so to speak, and from an ownership standpoint or even management standpoint?
Well, that's a continuation. That started about in Meadville.
Okay.
When I got up there, and I was working for Superintendent Harry Rowe, a nice man. He and I stayed in the same rooming house. But I was married then. Mark was born then.
Oh, okay.
He was baby. He was little. And this job started up there. It was a big job. And I was in charge of coordinating the excavation, and we had to haul a lot of site fill.
Okay.
Because it was down along the river, and they wanted to build a grade up. And that's where I got to meet Paul Keebert.
Okay.
He was the dirt supplier, and I took care of all the excavation quantities, and like the piles, we had wood piling, and I had to keep track of the length of the piling.
Yep, I know what you mean. Yep.
They drive till they get a certain refusal, and then
right.
That's all the further. It's all friction.
Right.
On the sides.
Yep. Yeah, all friction piles.
Yeah. Anyway, I got to know Keebert, and I'd go up and do I don't know where I learned all this stuff, but I did. It's the same old thing. You can learn it if you want to.
Right.
But I got to know Keebert real well, and he was an entrepreneur, and he had a little concrete plant, and we were maybe we did bring our own trucks up there. I forget, different jobs, but so through him, he liked the way I did things, I guess, and he wanted me to go to work. He was a road builder, wanted me to go to work for him. I says, I'm not a road builder, I'm a building guy.
Yeah.
Well, he said, let's start a company. I says, no, there's a missing piece, there's something not there. So that's when I left the Philadelphia company. I'm cutting things short, but
that's okay.
I left Philadelphia company and went to work for DeVore.
Right. In Meadville still?
In Meadville, yeah. And I worked for him for a year, and we got pretty busy. I was busy, and Dick Goodwill, my partner then, after that, was working up in New York, and his wife she was from Meadville, and he wanted to come back, and so he got a job with DeVore. We worked for him together for another year. I was there too, and he was there. That's when I knew the missing piece was there.
Was Dick? Dick was the missing piece.
Yep.
So how did it kind of formalize? Did you and Dick just have a beer one night and say, let's do this, or how did it kind of formalize?
A long time to make up my mind. They were after me for months for that whole lot of time, because I still wasn't sure. That's a big step. I had 2 little kids.
So Mark and Roger are alive?
They were both alive.
Right.
That was in 1950, the end of 59, when we were figuring it out. And finally, I don't know what struck, but Dick and I resigned and gave her 2 weeks, and we got fired that day.
Yeah.
So I can't remember what we got a little office somewhere downtown and started bidding work.
Yeah.
Didn't have an employee one.
So it was just the 2 of you.
Yes. And we did a little job at an elementary school down in Cockerton. We remodeled down in the boiler room. I forget what it was. And Dick and I did it ourselves.
So when you say you did it yourself, so I mean, were you kind of more in the field and Dick was in the office?
Dick was in the office and I was in the field.
Yeah.
That's the way we set it up.
Yeah.
And that's the way I wanted it. That's the way Dick wanted it.
Now, were you, because they were union from the get-go? Good day?
Yes, we were.
And then was DeVore union when you were working for them?
Yes.
Okay. So
yes.
You are all familiar with that type of environment,
right,
and everything.
Right.
So it made sense.
When we worked for DeVore, he had a union, and we had superintendents, and I would he was doing some schools. He had a nice business, but he had no he had no children. He really wanted to keep us. He wanted us to take the company, but eventually that's what his thoughts were, but it just wouldn't work out, I don't think. But that's pretty well how our company started.
Right.
And you have to understand, DJ, money was a premium. I had enough. The agreement was the bank required us to put $5,000 each into something, and to make the company go, give us some cash.
Mm-hmm.
And what was I going to say? I lost
Money came as a premium, you said.
Yeah, and we started. I think that, I'm not positive about this, but I told Roger this. I think we went a lot of years and never borrowed money. Now, how that happened, it had to be Dick Goodwill's doing. He was pretty sharp.
He was the brains behind a lot of the financial impacts.
Oh,
of the
yeah.
company.
Oh, yeah, I was a ditch digger.
Yeah.
But I think, DJ, that I had a little bit better selling ability than he did, really.
Mm-hmm.
But and then we started getting all this negotiated. A lot of it was through Keebert. He would get in George Yarmouth's ear, maybe, next thing you know, drinking or doing something, and he'd talk him into
using you guys.
Yeah, it wasn't their exceptional ability. It was just what happened.
Right.
I can't say, I'll guarantee you, I didn't have any brains. It just required a lot of faith in yourself. Ensure that, you could satisfy the customers.
Right. Well, and I'm sure a lot of hard work, as you mentioned earlier.
Hard work. Jesus. I'd work. I'd come home and our neighbors, we lived up in Hillcrest. Neighbors would be around to see me, and I'd come home and I'd go to sleep right in the front floor of the front porch. I'd be so damn tired. But something else I was going to mention that went out of my mind. That's how we got Dad's dog food. We get into they were in 1961. That was the second year we were in business. They wanted to build some a loading dock with a dock leveler. You know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
You know most of the stuff. And Bill Gordon lived next door to us up in Hillcrest, and he worked for Dad's. So he got me that's before you needed drawings. You just did it.
Yeah, you just did it. You just went out and built it.
You get a shop drawing and you're this and that. So he got him in, and I got him over there and talking to Dick and George and their dad, and they finally, I think the job was a total of $10,000 or something like that. And we got that job, and before we got very far away, they decided to build something else and something else. We worked over there for years.
Yeah.
And that was all through friendship.
Right. And relationships.
Relationship. For an example, Dick would say to me, boy, we're getting a little tight on cash. So I'd go over to the secretary, the controller. He was, Louis Klingensmith was his name. Do you know some of the Klingensmiths?
I don't think so. No.
Anyway, I said, I could use a little cash. And he says, how much? And I says, X number of dollars. And he'd go write the check. it's just, that's how it happened.
Yeah.
It wasn't brilliance, it wasn't smart, it wasn't anything. It was just knowing what you wanted to get and go get it.
Right.
Just like you're trying to do right now.
That's right.
This is a duplication of my life, what you're going through.
Yeah.
Mark and Roger never had that problem. It was a pretty well good plum right there before when they get in it. But,
history repeating itself.
yeah. But that was, those things, you can't say I did it because I'm smart. That's not true. You did it because you wanted to do it. You had to push to do it.
So a lot of drive. It was just.
Oh yeah, that was my middle name. And Dick, we'd have some job. Maybe we'd be working down at Channellock, and I'd be out of town. I remember when was it Channellock or no, somewhere, and I'd come into town late, and I'd go by where he was working, and he'd be pouring concrete. I'd just park the truck, and I'd be pouring concrete till dark. Think nothing of it.
Right. Right.
It's just what it's all about.
Yeah, you did what you had to do, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like I say, it's not skills. It's just you wanted to get it done and you did it.
Yeah,
that's true.
How many employees did Good Day have there in the kind of early? And I know it was a union hall, and a lot came and go. But how many did you guys have in some of those earlier days, even through the
the office, for example?
Yeah, even in the office and even
well,
in the
we
field.
usually only had one girl in the office until we hired Jim Martin. Do you remember, man?
Oh yeah,
you remember him?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he was a young kid. He was about 21 years old or something. He worked for us for 45 years or something.
Yeah, he did.
And he was a godsend for us because we needed him. But when you got as big as you guys got, I could recognize, I kept trying to talk to Mark and Roger about, you got to get somebody more astute than Jim Martin. Jim Martin didn't. He was good. For our era, not what you guys, not this high-tech area. No, there was no way.
Yeah.
But,
so you had just a handful of people in the office as you kind of grew a little bit.
Yeah, not more than 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And then I had Emil.
Right.
Is one of the old employees. Joe Tier, he was a carpenter foreman. We got to be very fond of. Jake Bauer was a carpenter foreman. Pete's brother, Pete Smock's brother,
mm-hmm.
was one of the old employees. But see, we didn't build the office, I don't think, till 69 or something, I believe.
The office where it is now.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we didn't have a lot of people because of Union Hall,
right. You could
supply and demand. You could, but when we got a good one or somebody that we tried to keep them.
Right. Makes sense.
We grew into where we had enough. We might have 2 schools going somewhere around. I had a couple good superintendents. Mickey Schick was one. He's the one that built the gym. But you don't get overhead.
Right.
As you know now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been through that.
Yeah.
I abhorred getting people that I might have felt obligated to. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to get friendly with I didn't want to be obligated.
Certainly, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Understood, yeah.
It was good.
So, even, I'm not sure where, if we're running around you building the office or wherever we are in the story here of, did you ever see, whether it be any interest, or did you ever think that, any of your kids would ultimately get into the business? When did that start having any kind of interest, or did anybody ever say anything?
Roger was 6 years old when he said, "I want the company." That's a fact. And Mark was about 16 when he told me to stick it. And that's a fact. And then Mark, I'm going he was going to do this or do that. And he came back and turned out very well.
Obviously, yeah, definitely, yeah. So how did that kind of transpire for you to, kind of grow this thing from nothing, with obviously, a couple partners and a couple people that, relationships and
two partners.
Two partners initially, and then maybe, just down to Dick.
Let me get on to that. In about, what year was it? I'm trying to, boy, it's hard for me. Let me think about that. I think it might have been, anyway, when things got tough, Dick Goodwill was bidding work and not getting any work, and this and that, and then he said, somehow it got around it, he wanted to get out. I don't know how that went. Did I approach it but I told him I'll buy you out. That's when Mark and Roger just came in. That might have been about 68. No, it's after the office. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So I told Dick Goodwill, I said, "I'll buy you out, but you got to help me buy Keebert out also." I wanted them both out.
Mm-hmm.
So he agreed with that, and took a year or two.
Certainly, yeah, that would take some time.
To get Keebert out.
Right.
Keebert didn't want to get out because he could see the company was growing, and although Dick didn't have any faith in it, I did. So we find a folder and we find a work where I bought them both out. I can't think when year. Anyway, maybe 10 years later, that's when I decided that if I stay here, I'm going to run the company till I'm dead. It's just a logical thing to do, DJ.
Right.
So when I became 62, which would be 92, that's when I said, "Okay, I'm gone." And I retired and turned it over to Mark and Roger.
And at that point, they had already been...
Oh, they had been there for maybe 20 years.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I'm getting these.
Yeah, that probably is pretty close. I mean, that would have been pretty close.
20 years from 92 would be 72.
In there closer, yeah. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
So they take it over, and you retire, but you're still somewhat involved.
This is where it gets foggy. I can't. I don't know what I did. I don't know how it all happened. I don't know how the stock got changed. I don't remember.
Not even those details. But day-to-day operations, Mark and Roger handling them. You're less and less involved, but. Describe that, maybe just describe it a little bit of, how is that you're, this thing that you've been babysitting for 30 years, yes. 30 plus years is, you're kind of giving the keys to somebody else, so to speak. Granted, they're your sons, but how's that feeling go for you? I mean, any thoughts on that?
Well, the main thought I had is, I didn't want to do it, but I knew I had to. Not that I'm indispensable, but you you can't give somebody a commitment to run the business and then stay back and second guess them. You can't do that.
Right.
It's just no good.
Certainly.
And so I just sort of backed out. I don't think I was much involved in it, not much. If I can remember, my mind's a little fake. That period of time, I don't know what happened to me. I can't remember.
Yeah, and that's okay. No, that's no problem. So going from, what does it mean to you though to have kind of them take the torch, so to speak? What does that mean to you, even now, whether it was back then or even like what do you feel about it now of them, kind of taking the torch and keeping it going?
Well, I was very encouraging, very much so. But I had, Mark and I have had some bumps. There's no question about that. Roger's always been on my side, pretty much. But I'm sure Mark will hear this. It doesn't matter. I'm going to tell him. If he were sitting here, I'd tell him.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. But that's when they got into the wastewater. Mark, that was Mark's baby. He's one. I know some of those big jobs he did were great, but some of them were lousy. The last one.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. Lack of attention on everybody's part. 1918 just didn't come out of the dirt. Everybody had a little piece of it,
right?
As you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about it, any of it. I never saw the jobs very much, but I was very gratified that Mark and Roger had enough. I know Roger did. He wanted that company so bad. And, when they were young, they worked for the company. I put the fear of God into them, I'll tell you. But I gave them the dirtiest job I could find.
I'm sure they would appreciate that now. Maybe not at the time, but they appreciate that now.
Yeah.
That's good. And then just to kind of maybe even, towards the end of this thing of just, then, now seeing it even just now of, Brian getting involved with it and kind of getting into that, third generation of things and starting to, again, then take the torch even more. And, that's got to be some sort of at least some proud moments in there of some sort of to be able to know what you built 60 years ago is still here and going from generation to generation.
The only thing is, I said to Roger, I don't want to see it fail.
Right.
I'd rather die first, because it's been such a part of my life. Even from back when I was a little boy, I think back of the things that I did, why I did to get where I wanted to go. I had a reason for everything. It seems to be. I'm not saying that as braggadocio or anything. I'm just saying that I seemed, even in the Marine Corps, my Colonel Lucas, over in Japan, when I was due to get out, he would try to talk me into staying in. He wanted me. He says, "You would be a great officer and this and that." I said, "Nah." I thought about it. It's the easy way out.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, unless you're in combat, which when you're in the Marine Corps, you never know. I was only active duty for a couple of years, maybe 3 or something. But you have to, as I've told everybody, you have to have that desire. Boy, if you don't have that, I don't know how people can get through.
Yeah.
In anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
If you know me, you know that's what I'm all about.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not a scholar. I'm nothing else, but I just have a tremendous desire about everything. Even playing bridge.
Yeah. I'd imagine you got a lot of drive in playing bridge.
Yes. Yeah. It's that's just the way my life is.
Yeah.
And I think Roger's got a lot of that. He's he didn't have the drive that I have, but he's got compensating assets, a lot of them.
Yep. Absolutely.
And Mark too.
Yeah. They certainly both do. Absolutely.
Both too. But it's been a pretty good road. Having Joanne's been a big asset to me.
Yeah.
She is so kind and so compassionate and so thoughtful, so forgiving. I needed a lot of forgiving in my career, let me tell you. But she's been great. She's the one that kept me going straight as best I could. She could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you have a rough and tumble life like I've had, it's not easy to keep straight and narrow, I'll tell you. You think it's easy. It's not.
No.
Nothing's easy if you have to work hard for it.
That's right.
But there's nothing more rewarding when you have to work hard for it. It's the most rewarding. If it comes easy, shit. That's what I think about you and Brian. You'll get there. You'll get there. It's going to be a few heartaches and whatever we all can do. We're going to get there, all of us.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be right there.
Yep.
There's no question. I love the company as much as I ever did, and I sure love you guys. You two are great. And in your team, it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we love you back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's good. This was great.
I hope it's satisfactory.
Absolutely. Any other final thoughts?
No, not a lot. Just if you can get out of here easy, then it'll be fine.
Okay, I'll get out of here easy.
No, I mean me. If I can get out of here easy, let all those principles I have apply to getting out of here easy.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be sure to
Like I said to Mark and Roger, I just want to take care of Joanne. That's all that happens to me, and it's she's a good soul. Yeah, she's about done.
Yeah.
Well, that was interesting.
Well, great. I appreciate you doing it.
Anything else you want me to do? Anything else?
No, I think that was great. No, that was good.
Okay.
Thanks for doing it.
You're welcome.